Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Sacred Symbols Plus, a PlayStation podcast supplement. This is episode number 195. My name is Colin Moriarty. I'm joined today by Last Stand Media's very own tech analyst, Tom from Moore's Law is Dead and Broken Silicon.
It sounds so special now. Very own, official.
I own you now.
Analyst. Look how much of an adult I am.
I know. Well, it's like I say, with you and Hogue and a couple of others, I think it's rude to ask you onto a show where you're using your specialty and your speciality, and we just expect you to do that for free. I think that's weird. So you are our analyst. We go to you now, Tom, as we have in the past for all things tech. But before we get into the things we want to talk about today, very welcome to you. How are you today?
I'm good. You know, I don't think I'm completely caught up on Sacred Symbols, but I think you can kind of feel a little bit of like, this is the summer period for like specifically console business and gaming news. And so it's a little slower before we at least cross our fingers that there will be that, you know, fabled blowout state of play that has clearly not happened yet. But it's the opposite in the desktop gaming and the amount of news coming out now. I don't even know what to do with all of it. The amount of new hardware coming out. It's incredibly exciting this year compared to last.
I'm happy to hear that because, like you said, here in the console and PlayStation space, it is slow. I felt bad because, you know, on Patreon we have exit surveys, so when people decide to leave and cancel, they can tell you why. And one of them said like the Sacred Symbols. I've never heard this one. I hate when people use this word, lazy. And they were like, Sacred Symbols Plus episodes have been lazy lately. And I'm like, guys, I'm doing the best I can out here. Like, what do you want me to do? But finally, I think we do. We have PS5 Pro, we have PSVR2, we have other things to talk about. So I am very glad. You were going to say something, please.
No, I just like lazy. It's like, that's why if someone put lazy in an exit survey for me, I'd be like, there's one thing I'm not, it's lazy. And
I would say that for ridiculous. Me too. We've never missed an episode of any of our shows, so I would say that as well. But we're doing the very best we can. But to your point, Tom, like it's going to start, I think, bubbling over with some games. We're recording this a few days or a couple days, I guess. No, one day really before the state of play, but it's going to go live after the state of play, and that's going to be all game centric. So we're going to cover that on Sacred Symbols.
I did see that too. I was like, oh, I better make sure to not make any predictions for that because for all I know, they could do the big, I doubt it, but show off a bunch of games. Who knows?
Yeah, they did say they were going to show off Horizon, which is fun and already breaks their own kind of parameters because they were saying like with third party, well, Call of the Mountain's a first party game. So we might see more there. But since we're already talking about PSVR, let's just talk about that because there are three things I really want to discuss with you today, and that's one of them. Since we last spoke, Tom, what's going on with PSVR2? What can you tell me about that? I think on Broken Silicon recently you had an interview with an Oculus engineer, right? So you're starting to kind of get your mind shaped into this next generation offering.
Yeah, and he was, you know, it's funny. Before he came on too, I got an email from someone that goes, make sure you don't go easy on him, you know? And I'm like, I wouldn't have someone on who's just going to hype up Oculus. And right. The guy actually just left Meta. So he was incredibly candid. Obviously, there's some things he can't tell me about future products because he signs NDAs that are in effect even after you leave the company. But it did get me interested. It has gotten me talking to other people who are anonymous at both, at Oculus, at PlayStation devs working on PSVR2. So this is something that's kind of been a blind spot of mine. I'm trying to work on now of like the VR space, and I have a Quest 2 now. And so my opinions on VR, as I told you via email, are radically different than a few months ago. Like I would just tell you, Colin, whatever you think current VR is with the Quest 2, it's like PS4 versus PSVR1 being a PS3. It is the PSVR1, the original Oculus products. My friend had one of the original launch headsets. It's like so cumbersome and annoying to use. Gen 1, even Gen 2 VR devices. I think we're on like 3 or 4 now. And I can just say the Quest 2 is wireless. It's only $300. It can run half of the games out there on it without even connecting to anything else because it has its own SoC. And it just works. Like, for example, my desktop next to me right now is upstairs. This is the studio. And there's an Ethernet that I've snaked downstairs to my router. I use the Quest downstairs. because it technically uses the Wi-Fi from the router, which is
Mm,
directly connected to my desktop. So I don't have to do anything. I press a button, I put it on my head, and I play Half-Life Alyx in my kitchen. And I don't have to move
awesome.
things out of the way. I don't have to set up anything. And I was so surprised how well it works. So I think that's a good thing to say from the beginning because, I got a lot of reader mails on my Oculus episode from people saying, like, why should I care now? And it's just hard to convey. It is so much better than it was 5 years ago, guys. It is. So Sony is entering into this space with very, very real competition that is not like what you guys might think it was. Like I thought it was a year ago, where I thought VR hadn't changed for a few years. It has. It just lacks the games, and it lacks something that's cheap enough with the games for everyone to go out and buy it. So I don't know. I guess that's where I would start this VR conversation. I don't know if I got off track. Like,
No,
what
not at all.
the
There
next
is no
thing
track
you want to
on
bring
this
up?
show, as you know. No, I'm curious because so you had the guy from Oculus on, which is really interesting. Kind of resetting your mind to what the possibilities are for VR. I think last time we spoke about how PSVR2 will probably be a little more cumbersome, right? Because of that one wire that you still need to connect to your PS5. But does that seem like a game changer to you at all, or is it really going to matter? I think I remember saying to you that I thought that future-proofed the machine, but I think you were saying that it's like literally just data or something like that. What's going on with that cord, and why do we
My
still
answer
need
is
it?
I don't know yet.
Yeah.
Because my experience so far is either my friend's VR device. He he like the setup was so Rube Goldbergian. He had like 4 cables plugged into the back of his desktop that he snaked to another front room that we couldn't even get the sound working because the drivers weren't right, because PC always loves doing that to you. And then on the PSVR1, you had to have another PS4 on top of a PS4 with 4 cables. Like, it was
It
so
was horrible.
cumbersome.
It was horrible. I in hindsight, I'm like, this is horrifying how bad this is, but it was so novel that we were like, oh, I guess that's what's necessary,
And it wasn't $1,000.
Right.
So
Sure.
that was such a big difference compared to everything else. And so my only experience is the horrific. And like I just told you, I put on the Quest, press a button, and I don't move any. I just walk. I played outside the other day in my backyard. I just used it in my backyard.
You were fucking crazy. Yeah, that's good. That's
I have enough trees around my fences that I don't think they saw me, but yes, it probably. I have video of my dog watching me, and she's just terrified. She has no idea what I'm doing, and I'm just stumbling around the house with this headset on. But so I don't know what the middle is. The middle would be one cable, and I don't know how cumbersome it is. And one thing that I've thought about with my co-host Dan, a Broken Silicon, since then is I don't know how good the cable is going to be, and I mean that in a good way. Like, most cables I've used are just long, fairly flexible USB cables that you kind of don't notice, but now I bet I would, now that I have a wireless device. Maybe what Sony thought is, we can save money on a battery, charging station, all of this stuff we're going to have to bundle with it if it's wireless. If we have a cable, what if we just made the cable not a piece of shit? Like, what if we made it 20 feet long, the most flexible, silk-like, out-of-the-way cable you've ever used? And I've never tried that. So what I would be really keen to try with PSVR2, or one thing I will be looking for when they announce it, is I will be zooming in and highlighting where's the cable in the picture. I want to see what cable they're including, because maybe the included cable will be fine for most people. But I'm going to say it again. My PS5's in an entertainment center in front of a carpet, in front of a couch and a coffee table. I don't want to move that out of the way. So I find it hard to believe that the cable will be good enough, though, for me to plug that in and just walk into another room of my house.
Right.
And so I still see that as a definite downside. But again, my understanding is there's prototypes that were wireless. So, and the Quest 2 has done this for $300. So you can't tell me Sony couldn't do this themselves.
Right. That's what I was thinking, was they must have sat very carefully with a series of prototypes and gamed out, like, well, what do we need for these things? What is the pricing and all of that? And it's the same I tell people all the time with, DualShock 4 was, DualShock or DualSense is a major step up, obviously, but Sony was very seriously considering offset sticks with DualShock 4, and those exist, at Sony,
Well,
and you can see their various stylings or whatever.
Well, let me continue on this too, because
please.
there is a pie in the sky option that I don't think is impossible to happen at all. And it's like the Quest 2 uses enough of a small amount of energy that you can get attachments that, instead of the cheaper head strap it comes with, you have a nicer thing, and it puts a battery on the back of your head, and then you plug a thing on the side, and you go from having 2 hours of battery life to 6. But what that means is it's pretty inexpensive to power the XR2 SoC that's in the Quest 2. The whole thing probably uses like 10 watts max, maybe 5 watts. And that's with an entire console, 6 gigabytes of RAM in the headset. So the amount of power the PSVR2 probably uses is like 5 to 10 watts at most. With that in mind, why couldn't Sony sell some kind of thing that you put up that attaches to the back of it that adds a battery and adds wireless to attach to your PS5? And actually, I think that'd be the most brilliant idea. If you buy a PSVR2, comes with 2 controllers, comes with the headset, $300. But you know what? For an extra $100, which is all I think it would cost, 150 max, here's a battery pack headset that you attach to it. Now it's wireless for anyone who cares about that. And you can plug the little receiver either into the PS5, or it probably doesn't even need a receiver, can probably just connect to the Wi-Fi 6 in the PS5. So I think that's what they should do, because if they do that, sure, I'll buy it and I'll buy the wireless add-on. Like, I'd love that. And I think that's the best of both worlds. And again, I don't see why you can't do that.
Yeah. I'm interested too. I mean, I'll obviously have to defer to you and people like you to tell me what the cord is all about when we see it and everything. But I was just thinking about, power and just offloading some of that, the power, I guess the power expectations of the games onto another machine like the PS5 by doing it, with a wire as opposed to, I don't know what you do with Bluetooth or something, I guess.
The only thing I'd really worry about is if there's enough bandwidth wirelessly to transmit the graphics well. But so far, I have an RTX 3070, which is really what a PS5 can perform like at best. Well, that's a loaded term because, they'll do tricks at Naughty Dog and stuff. But like, that's typically a bit better than most third-party games, what they consider the PS5's performance to be. And that's enough to transmit, the Quest 2's resolution of, it's like, I don't know, it's a little less than 1440p per eye. And they can transmit that without issue. So now Sony's is actually a little higher than 4K total. So is there enough bandwidth in the Wi-Fi when you involve latency to send that? Because from what I'm hearing from devs, the PSVR2's graphics are absurd compared to the competition like that. So I just don't know if they lose any quality transmitting it. And I wonder if also before they would try that, they want to nail that. I mean, look how long it took them to add variable refresh rate and adaptive sync.
Yeah.
But it turned out to be pretty good once they added it. Maybe they want to make sure the wireless is perfect before they add the attachment for it.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And we have word. So this is out of China. I don't presume to know this person, but apparently he's a very well-connected industrial source in China, Ming Chi Kuo. And he tweeted out, and people are picking this up at various places, that he's hearing from his manufacturing and assembler sources that Sony is targeting 1.5 million units to create the second half of the year, and it may launch in Q1 2023, depending on the development schedule of PSVR2 games. So does that sound, what does that sound like to you? Does that sound like we're going to get it late this year or early next year? Do you think 1.5 million is enough to satiate the demand? I assume so. And I assume that they're not going to be sharing components, right? So this isn't going to cut into the PS5's manufacturer.
No, this shouldn't cut in at all. And this is, and again, as luck would have it, that Oculus interview just came out. I really recommend it to people because we go into great detail what we think devs are going to do with these future VR devices, the performance, the market share. Part of that market share discussion is PSVR1 took the market, much like, honestly, PS Now, and then Sony, I feel like, neglected it a little bit. Because Quest 2 sold almost 10 million units, and Sony, I believe, is about 5 million or so. Now, to be fair, the way I would describe it is PSVR1 is in second place, and it's a firm second. Everyone below them combined probably doesn't equal PSVR1 sales. Having said that, it's a very distinct second place where Quest has sold at least 50% more units.
Right.
So they've kind of been ignoring it. I think 1.5 million, if the games are there, I think they can sell it. I really, because the market is clearly there for this.
It's also nice that with Firesprite, they're building a first party game. I mean, I think that alone, whether it's any good or not, I mean, who the hell knows? We didn't get anything like that, right? Like we had some add-ons and some functionality, but I agree with you, dude. We had, and you might've heard it on Sacred when Moss 2 came to PSVR, which is a really substantial game. It seems like it sold maybe 100 copies, like literally based on, in the first few weeks based on PS profiles. So yeah, they seem to have, Sony seems to have taken their attention and their foot off the gas with PSVR and kind of just letting it go and idle. And then I think we'll see a lot more starting with Horizon and all of that at the PSVR event. When do you think we'll hear finality about when it'll come out? Do you think that they're kind of keeping their powder dry in order to see where the games are before they commit?
Yeah, it's just it's such a weird time to be covering gaming hardware from the perspective of announcements, shortages, and volume, because it's on the tip of our tongues. We can feel the shortages getting better. We can feel things coming to an end, but it's not over. And I just got sent some data, actually, as luck would have it, I think last night, from one of my contacts who, like, his job is analyzing market share. And the PS5 is still sold, where is it at? Like 60, 70% more sold than the Xbox combined. I know right now there's been a couple months where the Xbox has outsold the PlayStation 5. It's because they were underselling Sony for like 5 months in a row, and there's just piles of Series S's in Best Buy. So, like, you can't get a PS5. PS5 is still outselling massively. And so why announce anything until you have to if your console keeps selling? I don't know is my answer, because my heart wants Sony to tell me everything they have coming out of over the next 5 years right now. My brain says, don't tell anyone, literally. Like, we know they're going to announce God of War's release date probably fairly soon. And like probably Factions, I've heard, and I think you have as well.
Yeah, the Last of Us remake,
like,
I've been hearing
sense, right?
I've been hearing that that's pretty done. Yeah, I don't know for sure, but that's what I've been hearing. Yeah.
And I suspect there's some other exclusive we don't know about, but like, my brain would tell Sony, honestly, man, do a blowout in September. Be like, guess what? In 1 month, Bloodborne remake, if that was one of the surprises. I'm not saying it is. Like, you might as well just announce everything a month before it comes out, because you're selling everything. But if you started seeing PS5 staying in stock at all, that's when you do the blowout.
Yeah, well said. And that's what we've been saying on Sacred is, when I saw Microsoft, if Sony looks at Microsoft as their staunchest competitor, and I think that they are, when Starfield and Redfall were delayed to 2023, if I were them, I'd be like, we don't need anything this year. Like, if I would polish God of War to the finest sheen, and release it in February, like, what do we need it for?
Oh man, and when it comes to like Redfall and Starfield, a question I got on Die Shrink, which is the patron like edition of Broken Silicon, someone asked, why do you think people are so mad at Starfield? And I said, and I don't know, I don't really follow the backlash. Like, when it comes to Bethesda studio games, the way I think of it is, if one comes out, I'll be surprised and happy because they take forever. But I looked up when it was announced. I was saying to my co-host, Dan, wasn't that announced? And then Dan goes, 2018. I'm like, no way. And I looked it up. Yes. And I'm like, oh, maybe this is why Xbox fans are mad. Because since Starfield has been announced, a new God of War has been announced, delayed a year, and will come out before Starfield is announced. Yep. I mean, it comes out.
Yeah, bad.
That's why they're pissed. And like, Sony knows they don't have anything pushing them to launch. There isn't co-op in Halo yet. What are we talking about? Like, what do they need to worry about?
I agree with that as far as the competition slant is concerned, because I just think they're just not showing up. Like with the Microsoft isn't with their games. Now they might, but I think Sony's in a pretty fortuitous position, considering everything is dry still, that we don't even know. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, we say it all the time on the show, and I think you're saying it too. It's like, you want to let steam out of the pot, but it's kind of exciting, right? Like, that we don't. It's weird as fuck. Like, we really don't know. It is very weird.
We don't know.
Yeah.
Well, and the one thing I'll say is this: I do know there are some people buying Xboxes in the meantime to play some of the newer games that are third party that run almost always just as well, sometimes even a little better on the Series X, or whatever it runs on the Series S. I will say that there is something to be said that pretty soon Sony should do a blowout, no matter what. I'd say they have to do one this year, even if they can't keep their consoles in stock, because I am sure some people buying those Xboxes right now are doing so because they're like, well, I don't know what Sony's doing. And if they announce like a Metal Gear Solid remake or something, they'd be like, yeah, I'll wait. I'll keep waiting for the PS5. Yeah. I do think that's a factor.
Yeah, fair enough. We'll see. Yeah, I think the state of play, which will have already happened by the time you hear this, will be one thing. And then I think, like you said, I think there's going to be the long rumored big blowout. Because otherwise, other than Spider-Man 2 and Wolverine, we actually don't know any PS5 exclusives.
And Pragmata.
What was it?
I think, isn't it Pragmata?
Oh, Pragmata too. But I'm saying first and second party. Yeah, Pragmata is true. I guess that would be a second party game from Capcom.
That was such an intriguing trailer. That one's in the back of my head.
But yeah, as far as, let's say, PlayStation Studios is concerned, it's exciting to not really know what any of them are doing. And that's why I think the Last of Us remake that's coming is going to be a big surprise, because I just think it's going to come like that. And my only wonder is if Factions attached to it and all that, but we'll figure that out on Sacred. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about, or another thing, Tom, that I wanted to talk to you about per our notes is PlayStation 5 Pro. Who's the first person that I messaged and talked to when I heard about this? Was Tom. And I sent him a message because I know he was getting beat up about his sourcing on this. And he was, in my mind, totally fucking vindicated. Not that I ever doubted you.
The craziest thing for me with that is just people doubting they're working on it. Like, are you guys like, they've done the, I don't know.
Well, it's the same
like,
thing when I tell people like, yeah, you haven't seen the last of Bloodborne, and everyone's like, what? Colin announced Bloodborne 2. And I'm like, do you really think that they're not going to release Bloodborne on PS5? Is that like what you really think? It's not like I could have made that up out of whole cloth.
I got so much credit for calling God of War Ragnarok and then correctly calling when they would announce it. But there were people like, there's no way. And I'm like, well, wait, do you think they're not making another God of War, guys? Like, first of all, I didn't think that was impressive. I leaked that at all.
No.
Well, I don't want to derail what we're...
Please.
I want to say one more thing about a couple of things about VR, though.
Oh, okay. Please. I didn't mean to change topics. Go to PSVR, back to PSVR if you'd like.
No, but I felt it. I knew it was going to happen because I felt it slowly transitioning. So before I do, though, I just want to say that the two things I'd want to hit home on that I kind of like prepared in my notes is, look, guys, the Quest 2, and since, again, I'm starting to try to get some contacts at Meta and stuff, I'll just let people know. The Quest 2 is actually sold pretty close to cost. And so that we can just use, let's say it takes $280 to make or something. Okay, well, the PSVR2 will have a better screen and eye tracking. Quest 2 doesn't have eye tracking. And it will probably have controllers that are maybe slightly better than the Quest 2's, but it also doesn't have a Wi-Fi chip, 6 gigabytes of RAM, a GPU, CPU. It doesn't have all these other expensive things. So I just want to say that unless Sony is hell-bent on making a big profit, I don't see why PSVR 2, even coming with controllers, shouldn't be $300. In fact, I'd be very impressed if it was $250. I don't think it will be because I think they're just more conservative than they used to be. And frankly, I think they know they're all going to sell anyways if they were $400 the first month.
Right.
So but I think $300, and I think that's a low, good price. And I just want to remind people, like, the advantage PSVR 2 has in graphics right now, the VR games made for PC VR. I mean, the Quest 2 is a little weaker than a PS4 if you were to try to build it for the CPU and GPU inside the Quest 2. If you're designing for PC, almost every VR game right now, the minimum requirements are like a GTX 1060 and they'll put /RX 580 from AMD. That's about the performance of a PS4 Pro. And then they have to say, okay, is this going to work on that? Are we also going to program it for PSVR 1? Half of the games still come to PSVR 1. Are we going to make sure it also scales up to like 10? There's like 5 different GPU architectures they need to program for. PSVR 2, what I hear from devs is, what we're seeing is the PS5 is, it can do special effects a bit better than a 2070. It can do pixels as good as the last gen flagship, the 2080 Ti, which is crazy. And overall, its computes around a 2080 Super. So let's just say it's around a 2080 Super, maybe just below. Like, it's like if you're thinking it's like a desktop 3060 Ti right now, for those wondering, that is 4 times stronger than a 1060 that they're programming for. And the devs don't need to program for anything else. So it's not like, oh, not only is a 3060 Ti is a PS5 the base, we don't need to program this for smartphone performance. They don't have to worry about anything else. And so the graphics they're getting out of the PSVR 2, from what I'm hearing, is just insane. And the foveated rendering, I'm told, is a bigger deal than people realize. That the fact that they have eye tracking, they can blur things they literally know you're not looking at, so you never notice it. They're getting even more performance than out of if it was meant for a PS5 running on a 4K screen, because they have the eye tracking to save on resources. Because if it's for PSVR 2, it's not for Xbox. If they program a game for PS5 like Far Cry 6, I mean, my God, what does it have to run on? It has to run on the PS5, the PS4, the PS4 Pro, the Xbox One, the Xbox One S, which actually is clocked faster than the original Xbox One, the Xbox Series S, the Xbox One X, and the Xbox Series X. That's 8 different devices they need to try to stay across with somewhat different architectures. If they make a game for PSVR 2, only PS5. And I'm just hearing the graphics are just insane. Like that, looks way better than Half-Life Alyx on PC maxed out. That the graphics you're seeing are something you're not going to get from another VR device. So I just, that's what I'm hearing the advantage is. The only disadvantage will be it's not wireless, I think. And I just think they need the games.
Yeah. And I think that they know that. I think the Firesprite acquisition, I think, was intended to fulfill some of this. I think they have London maybe working on one of these games as well. And I guess it's worth noting, I was saying there was no PSVR first or second party games. I guess Riggs is technically one of them, although Gorilla Cambridge, and that was fine. That was a cool game. It was just,
yeah,
it was, I think
that's
the
not
problem with
Half-Life
this,
Alex.
right, exactly. And it's not what people, I think they know they got to go Killzone. They got to go SOCOM. They got to get involved with some of these things and just burn it all down. And I was clicking around, just making sure my numbers were right, Tom. You had brought up this idea of a $300 PSVR2, which is very tantalizing. And what's cool about it in my mind is I was thinking, I'm like 2016, PSVR was 400, PS4 Pro is 400, so $800 if you want them both at the very best you can get at that time. And for that same price, uninflated, so it's actually cheaper now, you can get a PS5 and, if you're right, the PSVR 2 for the same price. And I think that that's like a really tantalizing thing. 500 and 300 or 400 and 400. Yeah.
PS5 Slim's got to be around the corner. Like, I know they're working on some 6nm shrink to make it cheaper, half the size. It's totally conceivable they could have a PS5 discless Slim for like $350 late next year. And then if you combine that with a PSVR 2, who's to say Sony won't take $50 off the top if you buy them at the same time in one big package? So now you're getting an entire PS5, a VR device for $600. Guys, the Index from Valve is $1,000, and it is inferior performance to the PSVR 2. That's one hell of a selling point for this compared to the competition. And I mean, the Quest 2 is cool, but the games that it can run by itself look like Xbox One games, and you need a $1,000 PC to compete with the PS5's VR experience minimum. So that, again, I think Sony needs to pay for like as many games as possible. Like, for example, Borderlands 2 had a VR mode. Why can't they add that to Tiny Tina? Why can't they? Infinite Warfare had a jet fighter scene. Why can't Modern Warfare 2 have like one level where you're in a fighter jet? Just every third-party game, I think, if they can do it, needs to have one experience, some option for VR, so that, kind of like when people are shopping on storefronts on PC, they go, you know what, I'm going to get it for Steam because it's better on Steam. It has better save support. It has better features. It just works better. I think that's also a selling point to say, yeah, you're not getting this on Game Pass because you get VR on PS5.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. First of all, I'm glad you brought up the PS5 Slim, because we've been talking about that, and I've been citing you but cribbing you as well on the show, saying like, Tom keeps telling us like the Pro is imminent and important because it's going to make the silicon smaller and they'll be able to make more consoles. So
not
it's like
thinner, smaller, by the way.
Yeah, I'm sorry, smaller. Yes, and so use less of it and whatever. So I'm trying to I don't know, invoke you, let's say, on the show a little bit there with that, but I'm excited to see what happens with PSVR 2. I think you're right. The games have to be there. I'm pretty convinced they have Half-Life Alyx and a few others probably getting ported. By the way, I love the idea of what you said about having games having PSVR options. So not something like Resident Evil 7 where you can play the whole thing in VR. That was cool. But I think of that launch title on PSVR, that Batman Rocksteady experience where you're just the Batman and you're just in his cave and you're just sticking around. Like, that should just be in the new Batman game. Like, something like that should just be in it. And
if they don't do it, Sony should pay for it.
Right.
You do it, Sony.
Right, exactly. So I totally agree with you, because I like those little bite-sized things, but I think with PSVR 2, people now want games. They don't want, and they'll buy $60 or $70 games. And I am interested. Let me exit with this question, because you're talking about how impressive it all is visually. Are they going to be able to show us? Because that was a major component of PSVR kind of not being, you had to play PSVR to get it. You really did. It wasn't until I played Oculus a long time ago at E3 that I believed in it. I heard VR for years and years. I'm like, I don't give a fuck about VR. And then when I finally played it, I was like, holy shit, and it was Valkyrie that I played. I was like, this is absolutely incredible. Are we going to be able to portray that, or is Sony and the studios, are they going to be able to portray that better?
I mean, the best thing I could think of to portray it, if they're willing to get snarky, right? And I don't even know how you do this quickly in like a 30-second YouTube ad or something, or really 5-second YouTube ad these days. Like, all I would convey to people is, here is the Quest 2 running super hot, perfect VR game. And it looks fantastic, actually, what they decided to do with the artwork. It's like, this is what their VR games look like. Here's what Half-Life Alyx looks like. Here's Horizon. It looks photorealistic. And it's like, and just the struggle will be conveying, no, this is actually how it looks while you're playing. Because Half-Life Alyx, itself is honestly, I've been playing it. It's mind-blowingly better looking than every other VR game I played. But it does not look as good as a lot of recent games I've played. This is not some ray traced, incredible looking experience. It looks AAA. But Far Cry 6 is better graphics. How do you convey we're going from what is kind of launch PS5 graphics at best is what you get on PC VR? At best, a lot of PC VR games still kind of just look like higher frame rate PS3 and PS4 games. To, no, I'm saying this photorealistic stuff you're seeing in other games, this is what it looks like on your eyes. I don't know, but that's what they would need to show is this is what they look like, and it looks like a smartphone running a game. This is what we look like.
I don't know, man. It's going to be exciting to see. I'm really interested. I feel like they're going to have bigger and better games this time. And so it'll be a whole new compelling thing. And as an exit thought, I feel like they got to get the demos or like some sort of thing on PS5 that people with VR headsets can regularly turn on to experience what is coming up. They need to, if they care, they got to go in deeper, and they do care. And that's the interesting thing. They've cared about VR for a long time. Sony has totally bought in.
Well, and not everyone plays the same game, so they can't just rely on Horizon, because I like Horizon, but I don't like it as much as Resident Evil. You tell me I can play Resident Evil 8? Okay, well, that's a selling point. But then I would also want to know I can play something, and I don't care about Batman. But if I could play a jet thing from Modern Warfare in it,
right?
All right, well, now you've got... That's why they need to try to put it in, like, everything, so that the three things you actually... It's like how Nintendo sells their systems. It's like you may not play Zelda, but you might play... Splatoon or, Mario. It's like, or Animal Crossing, but you don't play Metroid. That's why you have all of those IP, because 3 of the 9 things everyone plays 3 of those 9 things, but not everyone plays that one thing you're trying to sell system on.
Fair enough. All right. Shall we move on now to PS5 Pro?
Yes.
Talk more deeply about it. So as I said earlier, I wanted to just congratulate you, and I did. I emailed you immediately because I was just like, I felt good for you as my friend, because I knew you were taking some heat. But this all comes from a TCL. So I was actually familiarizing myself. I didn't even know what the TCL is. Now I don't go to stores and look at TVs. I probably might have seen the brand if I did, or in the last few years. So I was reading about them, Chinese manufacturer, kind of mid-tier, I guess. You had written to me that this is their projection.
I don't think this is confirmation, to be fair.
But do you think... See, my argument is, because I think some people are misunderstanding my argument. It might very well be wrong. Some people are like, well, they wouldn't say anything. They're NDA'd. And I'm like, I don't think you're understanding what I'm saying, which is they're in this ecosystem where they know it's happening, right? Like they just know it's happening. And
they wouldn't show that if they weren't pretty sure.
Yeah, that's
but
what, that's
I don't
what I
think
was
they
feeling.
have insider info.
Right. So talk to me about this. How do you feel? What's going on? What do we need to know?
And I mostly agreed kind of with their projections, to be entirely honest. I like that they didn't lowball the performance of the PS5 and Series X, like so way too many people still do to this day, in my opinion. I think where I'm at now is I'm just starting to wonder what Sony wants to do, because they've so many options, and some of them, at a minimum, they should do something a little better, because it would cost them nothing to. So like what? And that's one of the reasons they said, I believe in public interviews, but the PS4 Pro is they didn't want to make a PS4 Pro, but it literally cost less to make it. Why wouldn't we do something?
Interesting.
And that's where I'm thinking. So what I wonder is, because I'm starting, because I said 2023, 2024, and I stand by that. I'm starting to wonder, are they thinking maybe it's better to focus on cost 2023 and then the thing 2024? But then I also wonder, speaking with some of my friends, like most people are pretty impressed with the Series X and PS5's experience. Everything's 60 frames. Sure, not every game runs at 4K, but I think most people would agree, who aren't, annoying, like who aren't getting pedantic. They'd say good enough resolution in most games.
Sure, it's night and day, to the point where I'm not even a frame rate whore, and I notice it going backwards now, where I'm like, I can't play things anymore at these other frame rates. It ruined me.
But it works so well. I don't know. PS4 Pro, I mean, honestly, a base PS4 still looks pretty dang good for a 2013 $400 device. But I don't know what they can put in it, before it's like, should we just wait to make the PS6? And does anyone care if it runs 4K? Does anyone care if the game they're playing is locked 4K 120 or 8K 60 instead of locked 1080p 120 or 1800p 60, which is basically what it is right now? I don't know. I don't know. I would like the difference if it doesn't cost much more, because I play so many games. I just go, why wouldn't I sell my old console, pay an extra $100 to run these, like the whatever games I end up getting on console better. But I'm wondering what do you think? Like, would you go out and get something that is truly now everything's at like 120 hertz 4K, or do you care? Like, I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, I don't know that I care. I think I would. I mean, when PS4 Pro came out, I was pretty against it because I was like, this seems confusing and unnecessary. And I was hearing a lot of things from developers that were really uncertain about how it was going to work for them with their SDKs and all of this. And then it ended up kind of being fine. Everyone was worried about nothing. And so when I bought my next PS4 in 2017, I bought a Pro. And I'm happy with it. I think I don't play it anymore, but I think it was a really good, hardy machine. And jumping even from Pro to PS5, such a big difference. I don't want to limit myself to saying it's good enough because I don't know, right? Like, I don't know enough to know. I thought that I was happy with PS4 until I played PS5, and I was like, oh my goodness, this thing is. And now when you go back to PS3, it's like, I say it all the time. Like, I cannot even believe that we used to use this machine, and we used to be like, yeah, it's fine. This is great. So,
well, yeah, let me put things in perspective then, because the notes I put down ahead of time for this were just kind of outlining what AMD had at the time and what Sony ended up going with, because I think that's what people need to think about, because Sony is listening and they don't need to lock into a thing until about a year and a half before it comes out. They need to lock in their options about 2 years ahead of time, but options cost a lot less than final silicon validation of manufacturing. So I'm sure they have a lot of options floating around. But anyways, the original PS4 from 2013, I'm going to be honest, it had a garbage CPU. It had something that you would have compared at the time to like a $100 i3. But then its GPU. So at the time, the strongest AMD graphics card, which actually was arguably the strongest card at the time, was about $500. It had 2,000 cores, like 32 ROPs, 3.8 teraflops, 264 gigabytes per second. What Sony went with, not 2,000 cores, 1150 cores, 32 ROPs, actually the same amount as the flagship. So they actually souped it up. And 1.8 teraflops, 170. So they made something between half to 2/3 as strong as the $500 flagship. The PS4 Pro, this is when AMD was almost going out of business. So they actually souped it up better than AMD's best at the time. They overclocked the CPU. They had 2,300 cores at 900 megahertz. They actually had the same amount of cores as the best AMD card at the time, the RX 480. They actually had double the ROPs. They doubled it. And they brought in things like features from a graphics card that wouldn't even come out for another year. So that's where they got to something over double the performance of the PS4. PS5, what they have is, well, AMD's doing pretty dang well right now. They've got a mid-range CPU that's like 8 times better than the PS4's. Their graphics card is 2,300 cores. Their flagship has 5,100. It has half the ROPs of the flagship. Like, so you can see how they're going mid-range, and that's kind of what TCL showed. And so I'm just saying, like, right this fall, if they wanted to, they could launch a PS5 Pro, probably for $500. That's literally the same die, but they put it on 6 nanometer, clock it faster, fully enable it, and give it like 50% faster RAM. So I'm telling people, like, it would cost them almost nothing, and they might even save money because I assume it'd be slimmer, so they'd save on shipping. That's 30 to 40% better. And as we move on from there, the stuff I'm hearing AMD has coming is just insane. They can basically, for about the same price in 2023, at probably $550, they can make something probably 50% better, twice as strong as that. So once you get to something 2-3 times stronger than what's in the current PS5, we're talking about easy 1440p 120 instead of 1080p, easy 4K 120 hertz dynamic resolution. With ray tracing, they're supposed to have a massive overhaul with their upcoming architecture. So we could leave looking at 4K 120 hertz dynamic resolution with far higher ray tracing late next year for like $550 to $600. Do you guys want that, or do you want to wait till 2024? By 2024, they're going to have CPUs that are so much faster. They could fart and have a CPU twice as strong as the PS5 that's mid-range. They could bring out a graphics card that I believe would be some combination of like Navi 32 and 33 for anyone listening, guessing what that actually means, And at that point, you're looking at 8K 60 dynamic resolution by the end of next year. If they went for like a $600, $650 console, if they waited, if they go to like late 2024 and make it $700, sky's the limit on what they could actually do, because we will be 2-3 architectures of graphics cards from now. 4 times stronger will be the $1,000 flagships from AMD. So something half that price in a console, I mean, yeah, you're looking at something 2-3 times stronger.
It's
I mean,
I'm sorry,
it's insane.
well,
Go ahead.
I was gonna ask you. I mean, I've heard some skepticism about 8K and that it's like it's like. Is it true that you need like a massive TV that's like indiscernible, or is that just nonsense? Because people used to say that about 720 versus 1080. I remember back in the day. But I've only seen one 8K screen in my life in person. It was huge. It was at an Apple store and it was beautiful. But I don't know if like, it's hard for me to believe that it can get any better than 4K for me out of my 4K OLED TVs. But is that realistic that we would be able to discern the difference on, say, a 65-inch TV?
Well, TCL certainly wants you to think you can because they want to sell you an 8K TV.
Right.
So that's what all of that was about. But I looked at plenty of 8K TVs at Best Buy, just randomly walk in, look at them for fun. I can tell the difference. I can tell the difference between 5K, 4K. I had a 4K phone, actually one of the first one years ago. Actually, as a coincidence, it was a Sony one. And I could tell the difference on a phone that's 5 inches. And what's interesting is they're starting to do studies now where I do actually start to believe them because, yeah, when 1080p and 720p came out, I mean, anyone listening to this, please go read articles from 2006 where they're like, you need like a 6-foot screen size to see the difference between 720p and 1080p, which is absolute horseshit. These people were lying to themselves to say they're not stupid to spend more money. The fact is you wanted to save money, dude. I don't know why everyone has to be right and save money.
I remember there was a guy, Mitch Dyer at IGN, who got in a lot of trouble when I was there for saying that on one of his shows where it was like people were just busting his balls. And at that time, I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't know what you want me to tell you. But
right. But so I think the studies I've seen that I actually think are starting to be good studies suggest that, surprise, people have different levels of eyesight. And that doesn't just go for like 20/20, 20/10 vision. Those are two different things. That's like your theoretical sharpness that you see out of your eye. Other people are just better at discerning details.
Totally.
And I've always been someone that can easily see 5K, 8K.
I believe it.
But it is getting harder. It is. I'll be honest.
Well, I'll tell you,
way different.
I'll tell you, Tom. Like, I don't know. I mean, it's only related, I think, in optics, but you know, those like, especially in the 80s and 90s, those like hidden pictures within pictures things. Like you would look at it and you could see. I never, ever, ever, ever could see what was in one of those pictures in my entire fucking life. Like not. So it's exactly what you're talking about. Like no matter, you know, it was like the little dots and it's like it's a ship or it's, you know, it's the moon, and I'm like, I don't know. So I think it's something like that. I think maybe because I have great eyesight, but I don't see the finer details. And
but there's different levels of detail. So people are better or worse at seeing different colors. Like actually, on average, women tend to be able to discern between colors better than men. But men tend to be able to see switches, not even just in movement, but shadow. So you can see light on, off. Especially men can see it typically.
I wonder if it's
typical. Some
might
see
from hunting
or
something like that, like some sort of primitive thing.
That would be the theory, probably, right? Is it's like I can see lights flash on and off at over 1,000 frames a second. Can I see something move at the same light as everything behind it at 1,000? Probably closer to 500. And then, you know, then all of this is different. So when I see older people say, I can't really tell the difference between 240 hertz and 120 hertz, I believe them because some people might not, but other people can. Like fighter pilots probably became fighter pilots because they can see a grain of dust in the distance, you know, and that's why they became fighter pilots. Or you see these like people working at Apple that are like they're like very fine detail sculptors and artists. Artists tend to have very, very, very good eyesight, especially when it comes to color. That's probably why they became artists, because they could see the beauty.
Yeah, they're attracted to it.
See.
Yeah, exactly. That's an interesting point. Dude, I'll never, just as an anecdote, I don't think I'll ever have, though, the turnover. When I was in college and bars started getting flat screen TVs and like starting going from CRTs, I remember seeing a hockey game or a football game on one of those for the first time and being like, holy shit, this is insanity.
Yes.
And it was probably in 720. And I don't think I'll ever,
for sure it was.
I don't think I'll ever get another jump like in my feeling where I'm like, this is incredible. I can't actually believe we still watch TV like this. I don't quite get that feeling anymore, but.
I agree. And I don't think we will. And that's just what I would say is like the people that said they can't tell the difference between 30 frames and 60 frames were full of shit. The people that said they couldn't tell the difference between 720p and 1080p shouldn't be legally allowed to drive, in my opinion. Yes, you can. Bullshit.
Fair enough.
But it is getting harder. And so it's just this balance of like looking back at people saying you can't tell the difference between 4K and 8K, and it's hard for me to take those people seriously because you said the same thing about 720p, dude. So I think your opinion doesn't matter anymore. But I do think it's harder to tell. And so your question of can people tell the difference? Will they be able to? Will that be a selling point? I'm not saying it necessarily will be. Like, that's why if you ask what my brain would advise Sony to do, and I think I've been saying this on your show, my advice is make something 30 to 100% stronger, not 300% stronger sooner, because all games have dynamic resolutions anyways. It's like, I know Far Cry 6 runs at a dynamic res. I think it's typically close to like 1600p on the consoles, around there. Yeah, but what if you brought out something 40% stronger? It was always at 4K 60 and it was locked at 60. Like, would you pay an extra $50 for that at a store? I mean, I would. I don't. Why not? It's $50 and it's going to make all your games a little better. And then you just save the big upgrade for the PS6. I'm not saying that's what they're going to do, though, because if the safest guess is they're going to do something similar to before, where this is coming out late 2023 or 2024 with double the performance for $600. That's probably what my guess actually is. But I just can't help but think, man, I don't know if they need it. You know, I don't know if they actually need something that much better when people are pretty happy with what they have now.
Yeah, I'm wondering, like, this whole news cycle about what TCL was saying and all of this really bummed some people out, being like, I can't believe they're already talking about and doing another machine when we can't even find one. And I'm like, I don't think they really have anything to do with each other. I just think first of all, I'm of the mind, I'm sorry, if you can't find a PlayStation 5 still, and you're really trying, I don't know. I don't know if that's...
I was able to get 2 on launch month.
Right. I got 3 in pre-order and I haven't tried since, but I just feel like if you're really that fastidious, I think you'll find one by now. But I like this idea of Sony releasing, because 2023 would be 3 years after, it'd be the same window from 13 to 16 with PS4 and PS4 Pro. But I would love for they release before that the Slim as well. And I would love for all of those to come out at the same time. It would be really cool for them to say, like, we're dropping the price of PS5 with this. And at the old PS5 price, we're going to give you a better PS5. I wonder if they'll be able to do something like that. Yeah.
Like, what if you can't get one until 2023, but when you walk in the store, there's a $500 Pro instead? Right. Are you really going to bitch that now you got the Pro?
Yeah, you got the last laugh, kind of. So. I mean, you missed some stuff, but yeah, so it'll be interesting. It's just hard to kind of delineate when they will do it, since we haven't had these console refreshes except for last generation. So they're going to kind of set the trends moving forward, both companies.
Well, and here's some food for thought. I kind of lean towards it being end of 2023 on 6 nanometer now, because this is different than last gen in a few ways. Last gen, I want to say, yeah, so the PS4 was originally made on 28 nanometer. I don't remember the cost per wafer of those, but I think it was like $3,000 a wafer, and then, they cut that up into like hundreds of chips. And then 16 nanometer, what they made the PS4 Pro on, that was like $5,000, $6,000 a wafer. But here's the thing. The die size of the PS4 Pro is actually smaller than the original PS4 because 16 nanometers over double the density. So it was kind of a no-brainer. It's like, it wasn't like half as big. I want to be clear about that. But it was like, it won't cost us much more to make a PS4 Pro, and we can keep that $400 price point. That's not how it works right now. So 7 nanometer is about 9. They actually raised the price. It's probably close to $10,000 a wafer for a 7 nanometer one. And for 5 nanometer, I think it's about 18,000. So they're not just upping the price anymore. They're basically charging for the amount more density you get. And in fact, for one of the first times ever, AMD's upcoming Navi architecture, and I've leaked this already, their high-end chips are 5 nanometer. In fact, I think they're 3D stacked. So like wafers on top of wafers, just crazy complex. Those aren't going to be cheap. But the $400 Navi 33 option, that one that if you're a gamer is probably going to be in the RX 7600 XT, maybe 7700 XT at most, that's still going to be on 6 nanometer, which is from the same family as 7. It's like a tweaked 7. So that means this architecture they're designing, guys, doesn't have to be on 5 nanometer. Technically, it doesn't have to, but it costs money to put it on multiple nodes. There's entirely different rules. It'd be like saying, oh, we're going to make this engine out of aluminum and titanium. Well, all those have different heat expansion coefficients, and it's not just as simple as making the same engine in a different metal. You now need to make sure everything is accounted for with the different chemical properties. Same goes for if you're making something on 5 nanometer 6 or 7. The fact that they're making this architecture both designed for 6 and 5 means that they don't need to go with the most expensive node, that they have a path forward with 6 nanometer for a console that costs about the same per millimeter squared as what they're doing now. And they even have an architecture. They don't need to use Zen 4, which is on 5 nanometer. They could use Zen 3 Plus, which is in their current laptop CPUs. So Zen 3 Plus is like 40% better than the maybe 30% better than the architecture that's in the PS5. So they could conceivably design an APU that doesn't have to use a more expensive node with Zen 3 Plus for the CPU that would make it 50% better CPU, which is what they did with the PS4 Pro. By the way, guys, it was about 50% better. And then they could take out a GPU that they basically just, for those who are dorks, I think what they would do is take Navi 23, double the bus, and reduce the infinity cache. And there's a lot of people who just heard gibberish. It's fine. Basically,
you
what
can
they
say
would
anything
do is,
and I'll believe it.
and they would just convert what they're making for desktop to be more console centric. And they could bring out something twice as strong with a 50% better CPU, give it faster RAM, maybe double the storage. And I don't see why that would cost more than $600. And and then the best part about that is they're certainly converting the PS5 to 6 nanometer, and they can just use the 6 nanometer current Gen 1 as the Slim for $350. And so I think that's a good segmentation. And I think that would probably launch. I actually think the Series S Slim might launch late this year and be a little better. But it's still, of course, going to be much weaker than the PS5. I think that would mean, though, that they're going to launch the PS5 Pro before the Xbox Series X Pro, whatever the heck they call it. Why? I don't know. And I think that'd behoove them to have something out that ends the argument of what's stronger a year before Xbox comes out. Because by the time the One X came out, people were already talking about the PS5. And I think it behooves Sony to do that again. Further, and to add credence to this, by the way, TSMC is literally forcing people to switch to 6 nanometer because it's more economical than 7. So Sony will be making 6 nanometer consoles, guys, because they will make them. So if you're going to have to do some minor design work to transfer it anyways, why not make it better? So I don't know. That's what I'm thinking.
I'm afraid to even ask this because people laugh, but people are already talking about it. So I do want to exit with it. What about PlayStation 6? I mean, what do you, I mean, things seem to be moving so quickly. Like what can this machine even do for us in 5 years that can be imagined? What are you thinking about that? I see people talking about it already.
Now, before I say teraflops does not directly equal gaming performance. I haven't leaked this yet, but I believe RDNA 3, RDNA 2 is the graphics architecture. Roughly, it's really a combination of like 3 different architectures because it's custom, but roughly speaking, RDNA 2 is what's in the PS5 and Series X. RDNA 3 is going to, I believe, double stream processors, which is what goes into the calculation of teraflops, basically, per compute unit. But it's not going to like double performance per compute unit. It's going to be like they're doubling the amount of math it can do, which should bring 50% more performance per compute unit. So I think, so when I say teraflops here, guys, don't think that means that much more performance. But the PS5 and Series X are a similar amount of performance. They're both, let's just average it to 11 teraflops because, again, like I don't want to get into that debate. The current flagship AMD has on desktop is 23, 25 teraflops right now. RDNA 3 should go up to like 80 teraflops.
So we're getting into like cosmic sort of shit, really, where it's that's so funny to me. Like I don't even know what you do with it. Yeah.
And I think RDNA 4 coming out at the end of next year, if not early 2024, would be 150, 200 teraflops. We're in 2024. We're talking, guys, like 20 times the teraflops what's in the consoles. 2025, 2026. I don't know what I don't know what's coming out by then. It's too far. I don't know. My sources don't know. But why would I assume it's anything less than 300, 400 teraflops? Yeah, I think people need to put that in perspective when they say they don't want a PS5 Pro. It's like, really? You want the integrated Intel graphics to be as strong as your console in 2024? Right. And so what would be in the PS6? More teraflops, more performance, more calculations, better ray tracing. I actually hear RDNA 3 may triple ray tracing performance per teraflop as well. So that should put in perspective how hilariously better at ray tracing this generation.
It's so interesting, man. Like I wonder if that kind of technological advance almost demands the console quicker. Like if we would, like PS1 to PS2
Preaching to
is
the
5 years.
choir.
I'm sorry.
You're preaching to the choir.
Yeah.
That's why I don't want them to do this big 3 times better PS5 Pro. Get a 40% better one out this year and then launch the PS6 in 2024, 2025. But I don't know if it'll be fundamentally better in every way. See, that's the funny thing, right? The Xbox One X is undoubtedly like double, triple the performance of the base PS4. But its CPU is like 40% better. It still uses a hard drive. Fundamentally, it just cannot run PS5 games because it just has a different level of technology. So what I don't know is what the next thing is going to be for the PS6, because guys, spoiler alert, I bet it has a lot more teraflops. I bet its CPU is a lot. I mean, the server CPU they had when the PS4 came out was 64 cores. This year, 96. Next year, I believe 256. Then there's going to be server chips about the size of a deck of cards that have about 500 cores or to 1,000 cores. Now, these are like 10 grand to 20 grand, but when the PS6 comes out. So I don't know how many cores it's going to have. I'm guessing more. I don't know how fast they'll be clocked. I'm guessing higher, but I think what we would see is something that, and just to be clear, guys, the graphics performance and CPU performance increase right now is faster than it was in the previous 10 years because Intel dominated the market. AMD almost went out of business. There's less competition. Competition's back. So I really think what we would see out of a PS6 is probably something with 32 or 64 gigabytes of RAM, probably 10 times the graphics performance at least, probably 10 times or more the CPU performance, maybe 20 times. And then the question is, what do they do with memory? Because I'm not sure the next step there. But my guess is actually there's something coming out called CXL. This is a hybrid between RAM and solid state drive. So my guess is actually, it wouldn't surprise me if what the PS5 had was 32 gigabytes of RAM. So only double again. But then it had like 256 gigabytes of hybrid RAM where you just basically load the entire game into RAM. So there's your quick load times.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing.
That is honestly my prediction for the PS6. And that would be a fundamental shift in programming again, where the developers go, yeah, we don't even need to worry about memory management. It's the entire game is in the memory, guys. And then install sizes, I'm not even sure how they would even handle that. Because I wonder if like you would almost unpack the game into RAM every time you play it. If you're willing to, you could certainly program a game to normally take up 100 gigabytes, but then when you're not using it, kind of compress itself into 40 gigabytes if you're willing to take a minute to open up the game. And then just like, these are your quick select games that instant load. These are the ones packaged into like 40 gigabytes to be unzipped, like when you're installing something with Steam. I mean, I'm just, guys, that's what's on the table in 5 years, that type of and yeah, look, it'll be capable of like 8K 120 with ray tracing probably, because I think it will be 10 times stronger than what we have now. And 8K is only about 3 times harder to run than 4K. So I don't see why I couldn't do that.
It's fascinating because I think, and we've said it on the show many times, and I used to say it back at IGN, that the PS3 era was extended because of the recession. And I think it tricked us into this idea that generations are becoming longer. But I think technology almost demands that, and backwards compatibility and the seamlessness of backwards compatibility now demands, I think, more iterations, which is so fascinating. I'll be interested.
Well, the one argument for why this gen might last a long time, and it's a valid one, is until you can put the thing I said, like CXL memory, until you can put like hybrid memory into a console well, we'll see what happens with inflation. Who knows if consoles will be $800 because of hyperinflation, but whatever the equivalent of what $500 is now, let's say it's probably going to be $700 if I had to guess in
5,000 Weimar dollars.
Yeah. Vietnam dongs. Like that's how much it'll be worth. Just so I have like framed hyperinflation dollars. I have like a 1 quintillion Hungarian dollars.
Oh, that's so cool, dude. That's awesome. I love that. Do you have one of the Zimbabwe?
I do. Yes. So I have a $1 trillion mark there as well. But
love that.
I don't think that's going to happen here. Fingers crossed. So let's just say the consoles cost $700. Like, I don't know when you can fit hybrid memory into that for $700 in the future, $500 now, because I think Intel's gonna and AMD are gonna have that in their server motherboards, I think at the end of this year, mid next year. So like, does that then take 5 years to trickle down into consumer platforms? Maybe, unless there's some other seismic shift again. But until we get that seismic shift, the SSD in the PS5 is so fast. It has IO controllers for controlling the data. So it really, and this is where PC fanboys will get mad at me, it kind of actually has the equivalent of like a 16 core if you're just running games. So it's future proofed. It's just not going to run, 4K 120. So there's just like the PS4 fundamentally could run the same games until we switch to SSDs. I think the PS5 is sufficiently future proofed that until there's a seismic shift, there's no use for a new console besides better graphics. But as you probably would say, yeah, but 200 teraflops, like, how much better are the graphics that it just is worth doing that? But if knowing Sony, they have always waited for there to be a truly new tech before they make a console, so it feels like a new generation. And I think the PS5 feels like a newer generation than PS4 did.
Me too.
PS3.
Definitely.
So I think they'll wait for that, And so that's the one thing I would say is technically the PS5 is going to be able to run everything that comes out over the next 5 years, no problem. You don't need to get a Pro until there's another seismic shift in how we make games. And I think the seismic shift is just putting the entire game into RAM.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Or cache. To put it in perspective, there's also like 8 megabytes of cache. Like RAM is like 10 times faster than an SSD, like 100 times less latency or something. Don't quote me, people, but it's like, magnitudes better. The cache on a CPU is like 1,000 times faster than that. It's on the CPU. It's like that. Like it literally, the data is instant. And right now, the new graphics cards AMD has are experimenting with 128 megabytes of cache on there for moving data instead of just using RAM. And I think the next gen may have 512 megabytes. And they're working on 3D stacking cache literally on top of the chip right now. So who's to say the PS6 might not be just some big die with 0 RAM and a terabyte of cache that's 10,000 times lower latency than how the console works now. So just to put that into people's minds as well, 5 years is a long time. It's conceivable Certainly. Entire games could be in cache. And that would be a programmer's dream too, because you can be lazy and because it's instant, you don't have to worry about the performance. So that's probably the PS7, if not the PS6, just so everyone knows.
That's pretty cool, man. I mean, it's exciting times. Before I let you go, I wanted to ask you just a couple of exit questions about other things. I asked you when we were talking before we started recording, I was curious on your feedback on the NTSC versus PAL emulation solution on PlayStation Plus. Now, again, I'm not a savant like you are with this stuff at all, but when I saw Ape Escape running in NTSC and then Ape Escape running in PAL next to each other, I was like, oh my God. So what do you make about this solution? I assume it's about language availability. That has to be the only thing that I can think of that they did it that reason, because the PAL versions probably have a bunch of languages shoved into them. But what do you make of that? Was that strange to you as well?
So I usually focus on hardware. I actually do think you definitely know way more about why a company would make this type of a decision. I don't know. Why did the PS1 Classic have a bunch of PAL versions?
Yeah, same thing. I think it's the languages.
It's got to be the language.
Yeah.
I have no answer for that specific question besides it's stupid. It's stupid, and it's stupid.
Yeah, it is. It's weird. I'm excited for it to come here. I'm going to buy Wild Arms a la carte and then give it a go. And
maybe it is the language. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd assume so, because it's like French, German, English, Russian, whatever, and they just might be like, well, we'll be lazy, as opposed to just, you can literally just upload them both. So I don't really understand that. But and then the final thing I wanted to ask you about was in your email. I'm reading it now, and you were saying people should really be turning on VRR in their settings on PS5 if they can. So I was curious if you could talk a little bit about that as we exit.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really surprised. In fact, now I'm double surprised about what's going on with variable refresh rate, because I know that, like, I don't know if it does anymore, but I think at launch, Far Cry 6 had screen tearing on the Series X as well, even though the Series X has supported this for a while. So I don't know what's going on with developers, if they don't have a toggle that forces variable refresh rate on the Series X. And again, don't get mad at me. I don't know, guys. Don't get mad at me in the comments. But like,
they will.
The fact that you can force it in some games seems to also unlock frame rates in games, which is just weird. And I tried it in Far Cry 6 and Elden Ring, and it felt smoother. There was, and Far Cry's always had screen tearing issues for some.
Oh my God, yeah. Far Cry 6 is bad. Yeah, with that. Yeah, totally.
I mean, I remember playing Far Cry 3 on PC and like capping the frame rate at 72 hertz on like my 96 hertz monitor, just because any time it would go below 72, it would cut the frame rate in half and screen tear. And I don't know what's with their engine where they have this issue.
Yeah, what is that? Snowdrop, I think, is their engine. Yeah, it's got to have something to do
That's
with
what they use for Division. I thought it was a modified Dunia engine, but my brain tells me someone corrected me recently that that's wrong. So whatever it is not that. I think they're basically using a modified Crysis 1 engine.
Yeah, Dunia, you're right. It is like a modified Dunia. Yeah. Okay, cool.
Which also had screen tearing problems, by the way, for those wondering. So they're using a 2006 engine for some reason.
That's an old Crytek. Well, Far Cry was a Crytek game, so I think that's where that whole thing came from. But
yeah, it went Far Cry, Crysis, then the other games.
Right, exactly.
But so yeah, with variable refresh rate, they say there can be bugs. To me, that's like Sony saying it's probably even more conservative than Sony saying backwards compatibility is something that we can't promise works, and then we find out it works on everything anyways. For me, from what I can tell, I just turn it on. I haven't had a problem with a single game, and it seems to just give a boost in performance. And I almost wonder how many reanalysis needs to go on with Digital Foundry's like comparisons of games, because they found that, like, for example, I think it was Black Ops Cold War. In some areas, the PS5 ran better. In other areas, the Series X ran better in 120 hertz mode. And now they just find it's locked 120 everywhere in the PS5 version. So there's something going on here with allowing boosting and forcing frame rates. My question with variable refresh rate, and it was something Digital Foundry, of course, was the first thing they checked. It did not unlock frame rate for Bloodborne. It did not fix the frame rate for Bloodborne. So I do wonder if this is something, because there must be a flag in all PS5 games somewhere that's a common flag in the SDK where the console knows in this part of code, in the beginning of the initialization, this is where it controls VSync and adaptive sync, and we can force it on because it's in the same location of the files for every game. I'm guessing that's not true for PS4 games, but if there's a way to add this to backwards compatibility games, and then and conceivably also add a toggle that unlocks the game to 120 hertz in experimental mode. And it would be experimental. Some games would certainly be broken from going 60 to 120 hertz, because some games like measure physics with frame rate. So, but some games don't, and it just scales. So I really hope Sony can do something like forcing an unlock to 60 hertz with variable refresh rate with backwards compatibility games. And then maybe force some kind of upscaling as well, because then they kind of have feature parity, if not better, with Series X's vastly superior backwards compatibility. And then hopefully they can apply that same principle to PS3 as well. I mean, look, they've added trophies to PS1.
It's incredible.
They've got to be able to add it.
I can't. Let me tell you something. When I found out, because someone told me right before it was announced that they're doing it, and it was someone from First Party that I know, and I was like, no shit, because they have all these virtual console patents for it for years. And I was like, whatever they're going to do the laziest, stupidest shit. And they did some of that with NTSC versus PAL, but it's clear they're not just emulating the games, which is cool. Like they're running on a virtual console.
They're not lazily emulating the games.
They're running on some sort of boutique virtual console that is allowing them to add an option, trophy triggers, rewinding, save states, and all that. So it's better than I thought it was going to be, which is interesting, because I thought, why would we ever think Sony was going to do anything other than the bare minimum with their software in terms of their legacy software?
Let me put it this way. Sony just proved not only can they emulate past gen games, but they're able to manipulate the code with that emulator and add things. So they can do whatever they want if they just frickin' get off their ass and do it, guys.
No doubt.
They can certainly have a general purpose PS3 emulator, and they can certainly add trophies and features to past gen games. They just proved it, guys.
Dude, a PSP game, I mean, I have it on great authority. The Resistance Retribution's coming, which is the PSP Sony Ben game, and that's going to have trophies. So a PSP game is finally getting trophies. It'll be the first one.
You know why I bet it's getting remastered? I just thought of this now. That game had a PS3 controller mode.
Oh.
So it's probably to convert the controls to current gen, which again, guys, that is, for me, the other side of the issue with PS3 backwards compatibility. The PS3 had pressure-sensitive buttons.
Yep.
Some games cannot run on the PS5 ever without them changing the code of how you manipulate buttons. And Metal Gear Solid 2, which is a PS2 game, but it's still pressure-sensitive, you aimed by pressing the square button halfway down and then pressing it all the way to shoot, which was just weird.
Yeah,
I remember just being like, what?
It was bad. And when
works, but what the hell?
Blue Point ported that stuff, they kind of ameliorated it. But I find that game totally unplayable on Vita because of all of that shit that they put into the game, which was clever at the time. But you're totally right. I was really excited to see them messing with the games like that because, and making it optional so you don't scare anyone away. But it was just like, okay, nice, because we're seeing third parties releasing these beautiful boutique collections of Castlevania and Mega Man and all this and doing all these wonderful things. Well, now you can do it too. And
you know what?
Yeah.
I would go as far as to say is that Resistance Retribution is a game to watch. What they do with that game is probably going to be a blueprint for what they do with all PS3 backwards compatibility, I would have to guess, because they have to go back and change some things, but it has that easy bridge of it was from the start programmed for a PS3 controller, but I don't believe the PSP had pressure-sensitive buttons, meaning they'd never used them on the PS3 controller. So how much better they make the PSP version work, how well the trophies work, how well the controllers translated, I would look at that and go, this is probably what they're going to do with PS3, because I don't think they can easily do backwards compatibility with PS3 as a blanket thing because of how different the console was. But they can certainly run the game by now, I'm sure. And I think they need to take the top 100 games, have a team of 20 people working on it. Every month they release a new one that's remastered 4K, the bare minimum to make it look okay in modern graphics, not the PAL. Well, there wasn't really PAL versions anymore then, and then, translate there's just gonna have to be a team that translates the controls, that makes sure and adds trophies if they don't have it.
Right.
Updates the trophies, maybe removes the online only options for Killzone 2.
Yeah, it'd be very cool for them to do that. I'd love that.
But they can do that.
They can do that. The interesting little feedback on that is that trophy positions in the list you cannot change the position of the list. So like if you remove a trophy and it's third, like it has to stay third, but you can change the entire dynamic of how it's earned. And it doesn't remove those who earned it the old way. Rainbow Six Siege, I think, has changed their list multiple times, which I think is so cool. So it would be neat to have that. But
and just as a brag here, because I like, this is by far the most proud platinum I've ever gotten. Too late, guys. No one else. And if you missed it, you're not going to do what I did. You're not going to have gotten in the top 1% of Killzone 2's multiplayer, and then also beaten the hardest difficulty and also beaten the game without dying once.
Those were people hated those trophies. I remember one of the Need for Speed ones had that too, where you had to be in like the top. It might have been Gran Turismo 5 or something, with the top like 1%, and it's just so it was like ungettable.
Like in 1 week, and you had to do it.
Right.
If you mess up, you got to start over.
So funny, man. Well, Tom, I appreciate your time. Thank you for being here with us today and for sharing your knowledge and insight. You're always welcome with us. You can, of course, find Tom. Where can everyone find your content? I'll let you do it instead of me.
Yeah, I'll plug myself. Oh yeah, let me say this too.
Please.
Those PS3 games are probably really easy to run. Probably really easy to run at 120 hertz in VR. So if Sony has any brain, they will remaster Resistance 3 and Killzone 3. Allow co-op in VR.
There are those Killzone rumors percolating. I don't know. We'll see. That would be exciting.
God, I want to play that game in 4K so bad. Its graphics are still incredible. But yeah, I am Moore's Law is Dead. My YouTube channel is Moore's Law is Dead. The podcast is Broken Silicon. You can find the podcast either, of course, on the YouTube channel or subscribing on any podcast app. And as luck would have it, I don't think it's luck. It's probably a correlation. I'm on here to talk about VR and stuff at the same time. I just had an Oculus developer on where we talk about what devs are saying about the PSVR2 and future Quest devices, by the way, which I am working on a leak for upcoming VR devices as well, with a varying degree of excitement depending on what each company is working on. So look for that. The new Broken Silicon is definitely one that would interest fans of this channel specifically. And I guess, yeah, we also have a Patreon. And I think the next Die Shrink episode is part 2 of looking back at handheld hardware. A lot of those handhelds are a lot weaker than I think people remember.
Interesting. Well, we appreciate you, and go support Tom and all of his endeavors as well. And we'll have him back soon. If we learn more about PSVR2 soon, which we might, we'll have him back with more urgency. But thanks again, Tom. Appreciate you. Always good to see you. Thank you all out there for your love, kindness, and support of all things Sacred Symbols Plus, Last Stand, etc. We couldn't do it without you. And we'll see you next time. Until then, goodbye.
Thanks, everyone.
Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Collins Last Stand LLC, and is proudly recorded in the USA. The show is conceived by, is written by, and is directed by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-hosts are Chris Raygun Maldonado and Dustin Furman. The show is produced by executive producer Dustin Furman. It's edited by associate producer Ben Smith. All of Last Stand's theme music is by my best friend, Ramon Narvaez. As you know, all of Last Stand shows, including Sacred Symbols, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer level on Patreon, our highest tier, and we're grateful for your thoughtful and kind contributions to our independent endeavor. Thank you.